What is going on with this boat? I feel like it's an albatross hanging around my neck.
Hi, I'm Joe, and welcome to MotorCity Boat Werks. Let's get to work. Welcome back to the shop. We're in the dog days of summer. It's hot and humid. Every day brings a rain shower. It's been difficult to work on my projects, but I've been slowly pushing ahead trying to get things done. The pocket troller project is on hold while I wait to sort out some components and get them ordered and into the boat shop. In the meantime, I've been working on the Skipper 20 sailboat, trying to move that restoration along.
I thought this episode might be a good opportunity to kind of go over the status of this boat. We can kind of talk about all the things that I've been working on, all the steps that it's going to take to bring this boat, well, to a moment of completion. When I first assessed the Skipper 20 sailboat, I came up with a list of about 6 different things that I thought needed to be done to kind of bring this boat back to life. But it's turned out that that list, well, it really wasn't complete. That small list has kind of morphed into something quite a bit more elaborate, and that's what I wanted to talk about. You may notice that the pilot house conversion is not on the list. I've decided to go ahead and complete the restoration of the sailboat and then decide about the pilot house conversion at a later date. I think this makes sense because one's got to be done before the other one anyway. I'm not ruling out the pilot house conversion. I just think that I need to sail the boat first before I make such a major modification. I've been documenting my restoration steps as I go along. I thought I'd share some of that content with you and kind of bring you up to speed. All these projects are very common to old sailboats. They're not particularly hard. They're a great way to kind of develop your skill set, and they can make your boat a little bit bespoke, something a little special. I've got 2 projects that we're going to be doing. One of them is there's a small hatch board that goes in the engine well area of the Skipper 20. This thing is a piece of plywood. Looks like it was epoxied a long time ago. We need to refinish and paint that, put some new epoxy on it. We're also going to install a small vent, kind of a vent screen on there, just so it looks kind of fancy. Often in these boat restoration projects, I'm not a big fan of using any type of plywood. I just think that over time, it deteriorates. But in this case, we've got a fairly thin piece of some type of plywood, and a long time ago someone applied some epoxy resin to it. They did a great job of sealing it, all the edges and everything else, but with sunlight and UV and it'll deteriorate in the weather over time due to abrasion, chafing, what have you. So now the wood is bare. We've got to sand this down and recoat this with epoxy resin. Once we do that, we'll sand it again, we'll prime it, we'll paint it the color that the deck of the boat's going to be. We'll also cut out and install a little small vent with a screen there. I think it'll make it look very salty. So we just need to get this kind of cleaned up. There's no sense in recreating this. I guess we could make it out of plastic if we needed to, but this thing's epoxied pretty well, so we'll just continue using that. And the other thing that we're going to be doing is working on the rudder and tiller. It is a gigantic tiller. Look at that. Look how big this thing is. It's at least, it's probably 4 feet tall, and it probably weighs about 75 pounds. It's quite robust, and it's got a good profile here. This here is at least 2-3 inches thick. We're actually quite lucky. The tiller looks like it's in good shape. Oftentimes on these old sailboats, when you pull the tiller off of the rudder, you'll notice that the end, because they're laminated basically, the ends will split. Water will get in there over time. You have to basically glue them back together. And the way you do that is using epoxy and some clamps, and you kind of re-laminate everything. Only after you do that can you go ahead and begin the varnishing process. But in this case, we don't have any delamination. It looks like it's in really good shape. So all we need to do is try and sand this thing down, and then we'll do a quick varnish job on it. Hopefully everything will blend together and it'll look pretty good. Now for the rudder, what I need to do is take a look at these tiny little cracks on the seams of the ends of the rudder. I want to make sure that they can be patched up with some thickened epoxy, and of course we'll sand and fair everything down. We're very lucky. It looks like the rudder hasn't had a lot of water intrusion. These may just be cosmetic in the gel coat, but in any case, we want to fix them up, and of course we'll repaint the rudder. The hardware looks good. typically the way a rudder is constructed in a fiberglass boat is there's some type of mold, and then they lay inside the fiberglass mold kind of a grid work of stainless steel bracing that's attached to the pintles. These are the pintles right here. There's some sort of a grid work inside here. Usually it's made of stainless steel. And in fact, it should be made of stainless steel. That's what gives this whole thing the rigidity. Now, they might also add some foam inside here, and they might, add some resin. Everything is kind of sandwiched together, and that's the construction of the rudder. With age, there will be cracks in the edge of the piece here, and what will happen is water will get inside there, and it will expand over time. In this case, we don't have that problem. So it should just be fairly simple, a little bit of a cosmetic repair, some paint, and it'll be good as new. I talked about this in a previous episode. Previous owner installed some sort of side mount on the Skipper 20. He didn't like using the engine well to mount the outboard engine, so he built this thing. We're going to go ahead and pull this off, and all of the holes in the hull, well, they'll either be repaired with epoxy or even bolt with some marine sealant on them. Now we have an interesting challenge. The rub rail is damaged. It was cut away to allow the bracket, so now I have to replace the entire rub rail. We've got to come up with some sort of solution for this. This will be something that I cover in another episode. Alright, this is the inside of the hatch. This is another one of those projects. Once you remove the hatch, we can clean up the fiberglass and the teak trim, refinish everything, and it begins to look pretty good. This is also a great time to experiment with paint colors. This particular color is called Oyster White. It's Rust-Oleum topside paint. It matches the gel coat color on the Skipper 20 perfectly. This gives you an idea what the deck is going to look like once it's completely refinished.
Okay, so today's project is we're taking a look at the engine compartment of the Skipper 20 sailboat. That's this area right here. This boat comes with an integrated engine well. The outboard motor, instead of being on a transom bracket here, it sits inside the engine well in this prefabricated area. The outboard goes right here. It goes down inside here. You'll remember we talked about this before. The previous owner had some professional closed cell 2-part buoyancy foam sprayed inside the engine well here. He did it in the forward anchor locker and also along the sides of the boat behind the pan liner and in the aft part of the cabin here. Okay, we can't get this out of here, so we got to kind of make do with it, and what I want to do is try and make it look better. And what I'd like to do is try and maybe smooth it out a little bit and then possibly do something to the inside of the engine well here to make it look a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little more functional.
The first step is I think I'm going to use a grinder, maybe sander, get inside there and try and sand down some of this foam to kind of get more of a uniform surface so that maybe it'll take some paint and look a little bit better. It turns out the best tool for this is a compressed air 90-degree die grinder with a 2-inch sanding disc. I wanted to show this project because I think it's a great lesson. Oftentimes, you start a project and it just doesn't quite work out the way you wanted. And there might be multiple go-arounds as you kind of work a project, trying to get it to the level of finish or to your design parameters, to get it to work properly. This is a great example. I thought it was going to be a simple matter of sanding down this foam and kind of painting it, but as you can see, it's not really taking the paint uniformly. It is closed cell, so it's sealed up. There's no issue with it deteriorating, but it just is not really kind of what I like. There's a lot more room inside the compartment now that I did this, but I'm still feeling like maybe there's something better that can be done. I'm actually thinking about what if I used some fiberglass and created some fiberglass trays, like a floor inside here that, of course, it might be removable. It might just sit on top of here, but at least it would give a nice smooth surface. The rest of this would just kind of be hidden underneath there. In addition, there's an opening where the engine sticks through the hull and it's actually too large. It allows water to kind of backfill inside the engine well when you're sailing or motoring along. So So I want to come up with some way to reduce the size of that opening, kind of create a plug that will be tighter around the engine as it sticks through the hull. I think this is going to take a little bit of work here. We'll continue this particular project in another episode. I think it'll be worthwhile kind of showing what my solution is going to be once I figure out what that is. So the next thing to figure out is what can we do with this hatch here while we're waiting to build the pilot house. I'd like to do something with this hatch. So, and what I'm thinking is if we just rounded down the corners and maybe put a little fiberglass on it to dress it up, it might look pretty good. So, because it's a clever design, let's see what we can do here. Let's take this off. The original Skipper 20 hatch was notorious for leaking. It was a bad design, so this is actually quite a step up. It's a clever design using this rubber here to bridge the hinge gap and act as a hinge. It works really well. It's sealed on here. And so that basically gets us this. Get out of here. This was the forward hatch on the Skipper 20. This was the main companionway hatch on the Skipper 20. We've replaced this one with the new restored Bomar hatch because we're waiting to decide about the pilot house and when we're going to be doing that. In the meantime, I want to get this hatch kind of squared away. This was a DIY job from the previous owner. It's made of 1/2-inch plywood and epoxy. A little bit of fiberglass on it. It's a little bit heavy, but the main issue is that it has these kind of sharp corners, and I'm curious to see whether I can round them over using a router and a round over bit and maybe kind of make this thing look a little more organic, like it fits on the boat. We're just going to put a new coat of epoxy resin on it and some epoxy filler, fairing compound to kind of smooth it out. Try and dress it up a little bit. I've rounded down the corners, so today is just putting on some resin here, which will eventually sand down again. Why do we do this? And make it nice and waterproof so the wood won't get damaged over time. It goes without saying that these projects are tedious. They take multiple days, sometimes going on weeks, as you try and work a surface to make it look good. This is all small detail work, trying to use the original parts from the boat to make it something better than it once was. I like this Rust-Oleum paint. The only issue is that I find that it goes on a little bit thin, and it generally takes 3 coats to get really good kind of finish. It lays down real well. It's very low tech and very easy and pretty forgiving to do, and if there's any repair issues or anything. But it does take 3 coats, and once you get to the 3rd coat, man, it looks real good. This is the 2nd coat right here that we're doing. It can also be sensitive to humidity. A lot of paints are, so that's no surprise. I find that if the humidity is a little bit high, sometimes this Rust-Oleum topside paint, it will take a while to dry. And you'll know when you touch it, it'll be slightly tacky or it won't feel hard like it's fully cured. That's probably due to the humidity. And you might think for sure, even testing a thermometer, your humidifier, whatever, hey, it's not that humid, but for some reason the paint thinks it's humid and it's just not setting up. I've had that happen on a couple of rare occasions, so you just have to be patient. It will fully cure. Give it an extra day and then you'll be back on track. Make sure you don't put repetitive coats on until it's fully cured. This is one of those weird projects, but it's something you have to consider. The cushions for this boat are really in very good condition. Someone went through some effort to have them made. The material is all new. Save a little bit of money. I think I'm going to keep these cushions. This is going to affect the color scheme that I use for the boat, but I think it's going to be worth it in the end. But unfortunately, there's some kind of goo or garbage on the surface of some of the cushions. Kind of ruins everything. Trust me when I say no amount of carpet cleaner or stain remover helps to get these cushions clean. It was some sort of a hard, maybe even dried spray foam. I'm basically doing is I'm using the very fine edge of the razor to kind of scrape it off of the fabric. And surprisingly, it's kind of releasing. Now, it is abrading it a little bit, see? So you got to be very, very careful. I don't know about you, but at this point I can begin to see how this boat is going to come together. A lot of little projects, they're all going to add up to making this something special. At this point, we'll wrap this up with one more project that has to be done.
All old boats eventually need to have a new name. It's kind of like their rebirth. What they once were, they no longer are.
I'll be back again soon with another special episode. We're going to be talking about how do you decide what type of paint to use on your boat restoration. 1-part or 2-part paints, I'm going to give you some truth. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see you next time. Stay motivated. If you like these videos, please hit the subscribe button. These videos would not be possible without your support.